12 people sat around a table worth more than most people earn in a lifetime. Crystal glasses. A chandelier older than the country. The laughter of people who have never worried about anything. Then the doorbell rang, and a woman no one expected walked through that door with two children who looked exactly like the man at the head of the table. She was not supposed to be there. She was not supposed to exist in this world anymore. 7 years ago, the billionaire at that table threw her away the night before he became CEO, chose a corner office over the woman who loved him, chose a shipping fortune over a waitress who had solved his $40 million problem over coffee refills. He did not know she was pregnant when she left. He did not know she spent 7 years raising his twins alone, working double shifts with swollen feet, choosing between groceries and electricity, sleeping 2 hours a night, building 6 healthcare clinics from nothing while he posed for magazine covers with the woman his mother picked for him. But here is what he really did not know. He did not know that his own mother was about to wage a war designed to destroy her. Fraudulent complaints to shut down her clinics, a manufactured custody case to steal her children, a $200 million scheme with his ex to erase her from existence. And he did not know that the waitress he discarded had become the one person powerful enough to burn his entire empire to the ground. This story will show you what happens when a woman who was told she was not good enough walks back into the room and proves she was always more than enough. This story carries 2 truths worth remembering. First, survival is not the same as living, and the walls you build to protect yourself can become the prison that keeps you from everything you actually want. Second, people can change, but only when the price of staying the same becomes higher than the cost of transformation. Words mean nothing. Consistent action over time means everything. If this story moved you, if you felt something real while listening, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story like this. Drop a comment and tell me, should Lisa have given Joseph a second chance? Or should she have chosen the man who never left? I read every single comment, and your answer might surprise you. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worst chapter does not have to be their last. This is Mr. Dawson's Stories. I will see you in the next one. 12 people sat around a dining table that cost more than most Americans earn in a year. Crystal glasses caught the light from a chandelier that had hung in the Gray estate for 4 generations. The laughter was easy. The wine was expensive. The conversation floated between stock portfolios and vacation homes and the particular concerns of people who had never once worried about making rent. It was Thanksgiving, the Gray family's annual gathering, invitation only, the kind of event where your last name determined whether you belonged and your net worth determined where you sat. Joseph Gray occupied the head of the table, 35 years old, jaw cut like it was designed in a boardroom, eyes the color of old money. He wore his authority the way other men wore cologne, lightly, but you noticed it the moment he entered a room. He was laughing at something his cousin had said when the doorbell rang. No one was expected. The guest list had been finalized weeks ago, every name accounted for, every seat assigned. A staff member moved toward the front entrance. Joseph did not look up from his wine glass. Why would he? This was his house, his family, his kingdom. Nothing unexpected happened here. The staff member opened the door. A woman stood on the threshold. She wore a navy blue dress. Simple, elegant, purchased with money she had earned herself. Her dark hair was pulled back from a face that carried the particular beauty of someone who had survived things that should have destroyed her. She was not alone. 2 children flanked her, a boy on her left, a girl on her right, both Both 6 years old, both watching the enormous house with expressions that mixed wonder with wariness. The boy had a jawline that did not belong on a child. The girl had eyes that were unmistakably, undeniably familiar. The staff member began his rehearsed greeting. "May I help you?" he started. The woman did not wait for him to finish. She stepped past him with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Her heels struck the marble floor in a steady rhythm. Click, click, click. Each step carrying 7 years of silence toward the man who had created that silence. She walked toward the sounds of laughter and clinking crystal, toward the dining room where people who had everything celebrated having everything, toward the man who had once promised her forever and then chose a corner office instead. The twins kept pace beside her, small faces set with a determination they had inherited directly from the woman holding their hands. They did not know exactly what they were walking into, but they knew their mother, and they knew that when she walked with that particular set to her shoulders, something important was about to happen. Lisa Moore reached the dining room doorway. She paused for exactly 1 second, not from hesitation, from timing. She understood the power of an entrance. Then she stepped inside. The silence was immediate. Total, physical, 12 faces turned toward her simultaneously. 12 forks froze in midair. 12 conversations died between one syllable and the next. A woman mid-laugh stopped so abruptly that the sound seemed to hang in the air like smoke. Joseph Gray looked up from the head of the table. The color left his face so fast it was almost visible, like watching someone drain a bathtub. Everything warm and alive in his expression simply vanished, replaced by something Lisa had never seen on him before. Not anger, not confusion, recognition, the devastating, soul-crushing recognition of a man staring at a past he thought he had buried. Lisa. His voice cracked on the single word, stripped of every ounce of the authority he had spent 7 years cultivating. The boardroom voice, the CEO voice, the voice that commanded thousands of employees and billions in assets, all of it gone, replaced by something raw and broken and barely above a whisper. "Hello, Joseph." Lisa's voice did not crack, did not waver, did not give him a single inch of emotional ground. "It has been a while." His eyes moved from her face to the children beside her. The boy with his jawline, the girl with his eyes, and Joseph Gray, the man who built his career on calculating outcomes and predicting market movements, began doing mathematics he should have done years ago. How old are they? It was barely a question, more like a man bracing for impact. 6 years and 4 months. Lisa held his gaze. Do the math yourself. Watch his face. Watch the exact moment when 7 years of carefully constructed denial crumbles into dust. Watch him count backward through time, 9 months from their birthday, landing precisely on their last night together, the night before he became CEO, the night before he chose a corner office over the woman who loved him. The boy spoke first. His name was Aaron, and he had his mother's habit of cutting straight through pretense to the bone beneath. Is he our dad? The question carried across the silent room with the devastating clarity of a child who had not yet learned to soften truth for adult comfort. Every face at the table flinched. Every fork that had been frozen now lowered slowly to plates. Every breath caught and held. Yes, baby. Lisa knelt to her son's level. He is. Then why does he not live with us? That is what the grown-ups need to talk about. Margaret Gray rose from her chair. The movement was slow and deliberate and carried the particular menace of someone who had been controlling rooms since before most of the guests were born. She was 62 years old. Her pearls probably cost more than most people's annual salary. Her silver hair was swept into a style that had not changed in 30 years because perfection does not require updating, and her voice, Schwentamans, when she spoke, could make the word dear sound like a death sentence. I do not know who you think you are. Margaret's eyes swept over Lisa with the efficiency of someone appraising livestock, storming into our family gathering with outrageous claims and illegitimate children. I will have security remove you immediately. Mother, Joseph's voice emerged with an authority that surprised everyone in the room, including himself. He rose from his chair, his napkin fell to the floor, and he did not pick it up. A small thing, but Joseph Gray had never left anything out of place in his life. That is enough. Excuse me, I said that is enough. Joseph met his mother's eyes directly. For possibly the first time in 35 years, he did not flinch. These are my children. The words landed like stones dropped into still water, ripples spreading outward across every face at the table. His aunt's hand went to her mouth. His cousin set down his wineglass with exaggerated care. The woman next to him pressed her napkin to her lips, as if she might be sick, and Margaret did not react the way most people would. She did not gasp or soften or show surprise. Instead, her eyes narrowed. Just slightly, just enough for Lisa to catch it. Lisa had seen that look before. 7 years ago, across a different dining table, Margaret Gray had measured her and found her wanting. But this time, the calculation behind those eyes was different. This was not dismissal. This was strategy. Margaret was not looking at Lisa like a problem to be solved. She was looking at her like a target to be destroyed. Lisa felt it in her bones, the cold certainty that walking through that door had not been a victory. It had been the opening move in a war she was not yet prepared to fight. But she was going to fight it anyway. 7 years earlier, Lisa Moore had not existed in Joseph Gray's world. Not really. Waitresses did not solve billion-dollar logistics problems over coffee refills. They did not catch the attention of heirs to corporate empires. They did not matter to people like the Grays. But Lisa had never paid much attention to what she was supposed to do. She was 24 years old, working double shifts at a downtown Manhattan diner that smelled like coffee and floor cleaner and the quiet desperation of everyone inside it. Her hands were calloused from carrying plates. Her feet ached from standing 12 hours straight. Her nursing school textbooks lived in a pile on the break room table, their pages soft from being read during 15-minute breaks that never felt long enough. Her dreams were small, and she liked them that way. Finish school, get a decent nursing job, maybe eventually afford an apartment where she did not have to check her shoes for roaches before putting them on. She had not planned on Joseph Gray. He walked into the diner at 11 on a Tuesday night, the kind of man who clearly did not belong there. Suit that cost more than her monthly rent. Tie loosened, like a man who had been fighting something all day and was losing. He sat in her section and ordered coffee without looking at the menu. His laptop was open to a spreadsheet dense enough to make Lisa's eyes water from 3 feet away. Rough night, she asked as she poured. Most customers treated waitresses like furniture, functional but not worth acknowledging. Something about her question, the directness of it, the genuine curiosity behind it, made him look up. Really look. Like he was seeing a person for the first time in weeks. My logistics team just cost me $40 million in a shipping delay. He did not know why he was telling her this. A stranger. A waitress. But the words came out anyway, carried by the particular exhaustion of a man surrounded by people who only told him what he wanted to hear. Everything routed through Seattle, and the port is backed up for 3 weeks. Lisa glanced at the spreadsheet on his laptop. She had worked the Portland docks one summer to pay for textbooks. 16-hour days loading cargo manifests, learning the language of ports and shipping lanes and transit times, because she was the kind of person who learned everything about whatever she touched. Why not route through Portland instead, she said. Port fees are lower. Transit time is almost the same. You lose maybe 2 days, but you skip the Seattle backlog entirely. Joseph stared at her. This waitress in a stained apron who had just casually solved a problem his entire logistics team had spent 2 weeks failing to crack. How do you know about port fees? I read. She refilled his coffee with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done it 10,000 times. And I worked the docks one summer. You learn things when you pay attention. She shrugged like this was ordinary, like she was ordinary. She was not. Joseph knew it from that moment. She was extraordinary, wrapped in the disguise of ordinary. And he became determined to unwrap every layer. He came back the next night, and the night after that, and the night after that. Each time staying a little longer, each time the conversations going a little deeper. Lisa resisted at first. Men like Joseph Gray did not pursue women like her without ulterior motives. There had to be an angle, a game, something she would eventually pay for. But Joseph was patient in ways she had not expected from someone with his background. He showed up consistently. He remembered details from previous conversations. He asked follow-up questions about her nursing courses. He was genuinely interested in her opinions, even when they challenged his own. "Why me? What should I?" she asked one night, 3 weeks into his visits. "You could have anyone. Probably already do. Why waste your time with a waitress who lives in a studio apartment and cannot afford to get her car fixed? Because you are real." Joseph said it simply. "Everyone in my world performs. They say what they think I want to hear. They agree with me, even when I am wrong. They see my family's money, and they become whatever they think will keep them close to it. But you..." He paused. "You told me I was an idiot for routing through Seattle without even knowing who I was. You challenged me on market assumptions over coffee refills. You treat me like a person instead of an opportunity. Do you know how rare that is?" Lisa studied him, looking for the lie, the hidden agenda, the angle. But all she found was a man who seemed genuinely lonely, despite being surrounded by people constantly. "I still cannot afford to fix my car," she said. "I can have someone look at it." "Absolutely not. I do not take charity. It would not be charity. It would be an excuse to see you again." That is the worst line I have ever heard. "Is it working?" She did not answer. But she did not say no either. Their relationship built slowly because Lisa demanded it that way. She refused his money, refused his offers to pay for her schooling, refused anything that would create a power imbalance between them. She kept working at the diner, kept attending night classes, kept building her own life, even as Joseph became an increasingly significant part of it. He learned to show up in ways that did not involve money. Cooking dinner at her tiny apartment because eating out always made her uncomfortable about who would pay. Studying beside her while she prepared for exams, listening to her dreams about healthcare administration, and actually remembering the details weeks later. 6 months in, he told her he loved her. They were sitting on the floor of her studio apartment, takeout containers scattered around them, some documentary about bridges playing on her ancient television. "I love you," he said, simply, like stating a fact. Lisa went very still. No one had ever said that to her before. Not her absent father, not her overwhelmed mother, not the string of disappointing relationships that had taught her to expect less than she deserved. "I am not going anywhere," Joseph added. "Whatever happens, I am not going anywhere." She believed him. That was her first mistake. A year passed, then two. Lisa finished nursing school. got a job at a hospital, started taking courses in healthcare administration. She had a plan, a trajectory, a future she was building with her own hands. And Joseph was part of it. More and more, a part of it with every passing month. She met his family on Christmas of their second year together. Margaret Gray looked at her like she was something scraped off the bottom of an expensive shoe. His father, Jonathan, was too distracted by quarterly earnings to form an opinion. Only Catherine, Joseph's younger sister, seemed genuinely pleased to meet her. Catherine was 22 then, bright-eyed and warm in ways that seemed impossible given her upbringing. "They hate me," Lisa said afterward, curled up in Joseph's apartment that was bigger than any house she had ever lived in. "My mother hates everyone who is not from her social circle," Joseph said. "And my father barely notices anyone who is not a potential business partner. It does not matter what they think. I am going to marry you someday. I do not care what my mother thinks about it." She wanted to believe him. She should have listened to the doubt instead. The phone call came on a Thursday afternoon. Lisa was at work reviewing patient intake procedures when Joseph's name appeared on her screen. "My father had a heart attack." His voice was hollow, stripped of everything familiar. "They do not think he is going to make it." Jonathan Gray died 3 days later. The funeral was enormous. Important people in expensive clothes speaking empty words about a man they had only valued for his business connections. Lisa stood beside Joseph through all of it. A quiet presence in a world that suddenly had no room for quiet. The reading of the will changed everything. Jonathan Gray had left his controlling shares in the company to Joseph, but there were conditions, board approval, transition requirements, and the unspoken expectation that Joseph would become everything his father had been. Ruthless, focused, willing to sacrifice anything for the company's success. Margaret delivered the message 3 weeks after the funeral. They sat in the formal dining room of the Gray estate. Lisa felt like an intruder, despite Joseph's hand holding hers under the table. "The board has concerns," Margaret said. Her voice was smooth as polished marble. "About your personal life, your readiness, your commitment." "What kind of concerns?" Joseph asked. "About whether you are prepared to make the sacrifices this position requires." Lisa felt Joseph's hand tighten on hers. She understood what was being said, what was being demanded. The price of admission to the world Joseph was inheriting. Victoria Ashford appeared 2 months later at a charity gala. She was everything Lisa was not. Perfect blonde hair, perfect designer dress, perfect pedigree stretching back generations. She touched Joseph's arm like she owned him and smiled at Lisa like she was already gone. "Joseph, darling." Victoria air-kissed both his cheeks. "Your mother mentioned you might need support during this transition. I told her I would be happy to help in any way I can." Lisa watched the exchange with growing dread. Victoria was connected, wealthy, appropriate, the kind of woman who belonged in Joseph's world without having to try. The board would love her. Margaret would love her. Everyone who mattered would love her. And Lisa would be forgotten. 3 months of slow torture followed. Victoria, appearing everywhere, at events, at dinners, in photographs that made their way into society pages, Joseph coming home later each night, his eyes going distant when Lisa talked about their future. The end came on a Friday night, 6 weeks before what would have been their 3rd anniversary. Joseph came through the door at 11. His expression was carefully blank in a way that sent ice down Lisa's spine. "We need to talk." 4 words. The 4 words that end everything. Lisa sat on the couch they had picked out together and watched the man she loved prepare to destroy her. "The board has made their decision," Joseph said. He would not meet her eyes. "They want me as CEO, effective immediately." "That is wonderful," Lisa said carefully. "There are conditions." "What conditions?" "They want me to marry Victoria Ashford." Silence. Each word a knife, each pause an eternity. Lisa felt the ground disappear beneath her. Not because she was surprised, she had watched this coming for months, but because hearing it out loud, hearing the man she loved confirm that she had been weighed against a corner office and found wanting, that was a different kind of devastation. "It is not what I want," Joseph said quickly, "but the company's future depends on strong alliances. The Ashford shipping fortune, combined with Gray Enterprises, would create something unprecedented. The board sees Victoria as an investment. And what do you see?" He finally looked at her, and she saw the truth before he said it, saw the choice he had already made, saw everything she had feared coming true in the defeat written across his features. "I see no other option." "There is always another option," Lisa's voice cracked. "You could tell them no. You could choose us. You could fight. If I lose this position, everything my father built disappears. Thousands of jobs, billions in investments, my family's entire legacy, so your legacy matters more than I do." "That is not fair." "Is it not?" She was on her feet. 2 years, Joseph. 2 years of being told I was enough. That your mother's opinion did not matter. That you would marry me someday. And now you are telling me the board's preference outweighs everything you ever promised me. I do not have a choice. You always have a choice." She grabbed her coat. "You are just choosing them over me. At least have the honesty to admit it." She walked out of the apartment they had shared. She did not look back. She did not let herself look back because she knew that if she did, if she saw his face, she might stay. And staying would mean accepting that she was worth less than a title and a stock price. She would not accept that. Not then. Not ever. She moved out the next day. Friends with a truck. Everything she owned fitting in a few boxes. 2 years of love reduced to something that could be carried in a single trip. Joseph called 17 times. She let every call go to voicemail. He left messages that ranged from apologetic to desperate. She deleted each one without listening past the first few words. She found a new apartment, tiny, expensive because Manhattan was punishing. She threw herself into work, into studying, into building the future she had always planned on building, with or without him. 2 weeks after the breakup, she sat in a bathroom that was barely bigger than a closet and stared at 2 pink lines on a plastic stick. Pregnant. The irony hit her like a truck. 2 years of careful planning. 2 years of building a future that assumed children would come later, after marriage, after stability, after all the pieces were in place. She sat on the cold tile floor and gave herself exactly 5 minutes to fall apart, to scream into a towel so the neighbors would not hear, to cry for the life that had just become infinitely more complicated. Then she got up, washed her face, and started planning. She would tell Joseph. She had to tell Joseph. Whatever had happened between them, he had a right to know he was going to be a father. She picked up her phone. Her finger hovered over his name. Then she opened her laptop. Habit. Procrastination. The delay tactics of someone not quite ready to make a life-altering phone call. The headline stopped her cold. Gray Enterprises, names new, CEO, Joseph Gray, photographed with longtime friend Victoria Ashford at announcement celebration. The photograph showed them standing together, Victoria's hand on Joseph's arm, both of them smiling. The caption underneath read, "Sources suggest a formal engagement announcement is imminent." Lisa stared at the screen until the words blurred. Longtime friend, inseparable, engagement imminent. She closed her laptop, put down her phone, and made a different decision. 3 weeks later, the doctor confirmed it. Twins, a boy and a girl. Lisa Moore booked a one-way ticket to Portland, Oregon, far from New York, far from society pages, far from the man who had promised her forever and delivered abandonment instead. She disappeared. Nothing about the next 7 years was easy. Lisa would remember that later, when people called her strong and brave and inspiring. She would remember the nights when strength looked like crying in a bathroom after the twins were asleep. When bravery meant choosing between groceries and the electricity bill and picking groceries because her children needed to eat more than they needed lights. The twins came early, 6 weeks premature, terrifying hours in a neonatal intensive care unit, watching monitors, listening to alarms, praying that the two tiny bodies in those plastic boxes would keep breathing through the night. She was alone, completely, devastatingly alone. No family nearby, no partner to hold her hand during the worst moments, no one to take over at 3 in the morning when she had been awake for 36 hours and her body was screaming for rest. Aaron came first. 3 pounds, 11 ounces, a fighter from his first breath. He screamed in the delivery room like he was already angry at the world for the inconvenience of being born too early. Avery came 4 minutes later. Smaller, quieter. She did not cry immediately, and the silence stretched for 11 seconds that felt like 11 years before a small, indignant wail filled the room. They survived. Lisa survived. And slowly, impossibly, they all began to thrive. She graduated with her healthcare administration degree when the twins were 18 months old. She studied during their naps, during their feedings, during the 20-minute windows between one crisis and the next. She submitted her final paper at 4 in the morning, with Aaron asleep on her chest and Avery in a bouncer beside her desk. She got an entry-level job at a local clinic. Showed up early, left late, solved problems no one asked her to solve because that was who she was. The woman who saw inefficiencies the way other people saw furniture, obviously there, obviously fixable. Why was no one fixing them? She worked her way up through sheer determination and an inability to accept failure as an option. Entry level to supervisor in 14 months, supervisor to director in 2 years, director to running the entire clinic by the time the twins started preschool. By the time Aaron and Avery entered kindergarten, Lisa Moore ran 6 healthcare clinics across the Pacific Northwest. 83 employees, 4,000 patients served every month. A healthcare empire. Built from nothing by a woman who had been told she was not good enough for polite society. The irony was brutal, and she appreciated every ounce of it. She told the twins about their father eventually, a simplified version. A version designed to protect them from the ugliest truths while still giving them something to hold on to. Your father and I loved each other very much, she told them one evening. They were 4, old enough to notice that other children had 2 parents, young enough to still accept her explanations without too many follow-up questions. But sometimes, grown-ups make choices that hurt other grown-ups. He does not know about you. Someday, when you are older, we will talk about why. Aaron had accepted this with the quiet intensity he brought to everything. He nodded once, processed the information, and filed it away in whatever organizational system existed inside his remarkable mind. Avery had more questions. Why does he not know about us? Does he not want to know? Would he like us if he met us? Lisa held her daughter and answered as honestly as she could without breaking. He would love you if he met you. Any person would love you. The reason he does not know is complicated, and it is about me and him, not about you. You are not the reason for any of this. They grew. Aaron developed his father's analytical mind and his mother's stubborn refusal to accept easy answers. He became obsessed with buildings and bridges and the engineering principles that kept massive structures from falling down. By 5, he could explain load-bearing walls, By 6, he was designing model bridges out of popsicle sticks that could hold 40 times their own weight. Avery grew into her emotional intelligence like it was a language she had been born speaking. She could read a room before she could read a book. She knew when her mother was pretending to be fine. She knew when Aaron was upset, but refusing to say so. She started writing stories at 4, fantasy epics about dragon queens and magical kingdoms, dictated to Lisa, and later typed on a second-hand laptop with keys that stuck. They were extraordinary, both of them. And Lisa had built them, not alone, because the village of childcare workers and teachers and neighbors who helped along the way deserved their credit, but predominantly alone. Through force of will and love so fierce, it sometimes scared her. Derek Hale entered their lives when the twins were 4. He became Lisa's business partner when she expanded from 3 clinics to 6. A divorced father with a daughter of his own, he understood the particular exhaustion of building a career while raising a child without a partner. He showed up on time. He followed through on promises. He remembered details about the twins, about Lisa's schedule, about the small things that most people overlooked. He fell in love with Lisa gradually, and he knew it, and he said nothing, because he understood that Lisa was not ready. That the walls she had built around herself were there for reasons he could not fully comprehend, but absolutely respected. He showed up anyway, consistently, without expectation, without pressure, without the particular neediness that characterized most of the men who tried to get close to her. He was the man who never left. And that in Lisa's world was the most remarkable thing a person could be. Then came the newspaper article that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning. The twins were eating breakfast with the seriousness of diplomats negotiating a treaty. Lisa was drinking coffee and scanning headlines on her phone. A habit, a way of staying connected to a world beyond clinic schedules and bedtime routines. Joseph Gray considering Senate run. Sources say announcement imminent. The article included photographs. Joseph looking distinguished and capable in a tailored suit. References to his family values messaging. His pristine personal image. No mention of Victoria, which meant that relationship had ended at some point during the 7 years Lisa had been gone. She read the article 3 times before the implications fully registered. If Joseph ran for Senate, journalists would dig. They always dug. And buried in hospital records and birth certificates was a truth that would eventually surface. The billionaire with the family values platform had 2 children he had never acknowledged. Lisa set down her phone, looked at her twins, thought about the options. She could wait. Let the story break on someone else's timeline. Let reporters spin the narrative, however served their purposes. Or she could take control. Mama, Avery's voice interrupted her calculations. Why are you making that face? What face, sweetheart? The thinking face, Aaron supplied. The one you make when something big is happening. Lisa looked at her children, 6 years old, smart and resilient and completely unaware that their lives were about to change fundamentally. Nothing bad is happening, she said carefully, but I think it is time we took a trip. Where, Aaron asked. New York, to meet some people who should have known about you a long time ago. The twins exchanged one of their silent looks. The communication that happened in spaces beyond words developed over 6 years of shared existence. Are they nice people? Avery asked. We are about to find out, sweetheart. We are about to find it out. She booked 2 plane tickets that afternoon, first class, a small extravagance she had promised herself years ago when first class had seemed as distant as the moon. Now it was simply practical. Space for the twins, privacy for conversations that needed to happen before they landed. The Thanksgiving timing was deliberate. Maximum impact, maximum witnesses, maximum pressure on Joseph to behave well in front of his family. She had done her research. The annual Gray family Thanksgiving dinner was legendary in society circles, invitation only, the kind of event where appearances mattered more than authenticity. Perfect. Lisa Moore was going back to the world that had rejected her, not as the waitress who was not good enough, not as the pregnant ex-girlfriend who might cause a scandal. She was returning as a woman who had built herself into something extraordinary precisely because that world had thrown her away. And she was bringing proof. Now, before I take you inside that dining room, before I show you what happened after the silence broke and the real war began, I want to pause for a moment and talk about something bigger than Lisa and Joseph. Because here's the truth about this story. It is not just about a billionaire and a waitress. It is about a question that every single person faces at some point in their life. What do you do when the people who are supposed to love you decide you are not enough? Do you disappear? Do you accept their verdict? Do you spend the rest of your life trying to prove them wrong? Or do you build something so undeniable that their opinion becomes irrelevant? Lisa built. And what she built was about to shake the Gray family to its foundation. The private conversation happened in Joseph's study, a room that smelled like leather and old books and expensive scotch, and the particular loneliness of a man who had collected things instead of connections for 7 years. Catherine had taken the twins to the library. Aaron immediately began evaluating the structural integrity of the bookshelves. Avery started narrating an elaborate story about the stuffed owl on the mantelpiece. They were fine. Children were adaptable in ways adults forgot to be. Margaret had been banished to the dining room over her furious protests. Joseph had overridden her with a voice Lisa had never heard from him before. A voice that suggested the man she had known and the man standing before her might not be entirely the same person, but that remained to be seen. Lisa stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and watched the estate's manicured grounds disappear into darkness. Joseph sat in a leather chair across the room, close enough to talk, far enough to establish that whatever intimacy they had once shared was dead. 6 years, Joseph finally said. His voice was hollow. You kept them from me for 6 years. I kept them safe, Lisa corrected. There is a difference. Safe from what? From me. I would never hurt them. You hurt me. Lisa turned from the window. Her voice was steady, despite the earthquake happening inside her chest. You chose your mother's approval and the board's preferences over our future together. You announced your engagement to Victoria before I had even finished moving out. You made it abundantly clear that I was disposable. Why would I trust you with my children when I could not trust you with my heart? I was not engaged to Victoria. Joseph's hands gripped the arms of his chair. That was a misunderstanding. The press assumed because you were photographed together constantly, because your mother told everyone who would listen that a formal announcement was imminent, because you let them believe whatever served your purposes without once reaching out to correct the narrative. I tried to call you. You would not answer. And what would you have said if I had answered? Lisa stepped closer. That you were sorry. That you still loved me. That you were going to leave Victoria and walk away from everything for the waitress who was not appropriate enough for your family. We both know that is not what would have happened, Joseph. You would have apologized, made excuses, explained why the situation was complicated, and then you would have gone right back to the life you chose. Joseph's head dropped into his hands, the posture of a man confronting the accumulated weight of his own failures. I did not know you were pregnant, he said quietly. Would that have changed anything? Yes. He looked up. His eyes were wet. Yes, it would have changed everything. I would have chosen you. I would have chosen them. Lisa studied him, searched for the performance, the corporate polish, the rehearsed sincerity she expected from a man who negotiated billion-dollar deals for a living. She found something unexpected instead. What she found looked uncomfortably like genuine devastation. Words are easy, Joseph. I learned that the hard way. You told me you loved me. You told me you would marry me someday. You told me your mother's opinion did not matter. And the moment things got difficult, you folded. I know. He said it simply, without defense, without excuse. I have spent 7 years understanding exactly how badly I failed. 3 years of therapy, 3 years of examining why I was the kind of man who let other people make his decisions for him. Victoria and I ended 4 years ago. It was never real. She was a strategic alliance, pretending to be a relationship. We both knew it, and we both eventually admitted that pretending was exhausting. Lisa absorbed this, adjusted her assumptions, recalculated. And since then, she asked, has there been anyone else? No. Joseph shook his head. The only woman I ever actually loved walked out of my life because I was too weak to fight for her. That tends to make everything else feel pointless. This was not the conversation Lisa had prepared for. She had expected defensiveness. Corporate Joseph, the man with the angle and the strategy and the polished response. Instead, she was getting something raw. It did not make what he had done acceptable. Nothing could make it acceptable, but it complicated the simple narrative she had been telling herself for 7 years. You want to be their father, she said finally. Fine. Here are my terms. Show up. Keep showing up. Prove that you can prioritize them over board meetings and political campaigns and whatever else demands your attention. I am not offering forgiveness. I am not offering reconciliation. I am offering you the chance to prove you deserve to know your own children. That is all. I will do whatever it takes. We will see. She turned toward the door. And Joseph, one more thing. Whatever this becomes, whatever you prove or fail to prove, understand something clearly. I am not the waitress you left behind. I run 6 healthcare clinics and employ 83 people. I raised 2 extraordinary children without a single dollar of help from anyone. Your mother's approval, the board's opinion, whatever pressure gets applied, none of it scares me anymore. I have survived harder things than the Gray family. She opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and walked directly into Margaret Gray. The older woman was waiting. The hallway was empty. No witnesses, no audience, just Margaret and Lisa and the particular cruelty of a woman who had been wielding power as a weapon for 40 years. Margaret's voice dropped to something barely above a whisper, the kind of quiet that is more threatening than any shout. You think you accomplished something tonight. Margaret's eyes were cold, calculating. Let me tell you what you actually did. You gave me a target. The last woman who tried to leverage my son lost her career, her apartment, her credit score. She moved to a different state and changed her name. And she did not have children I could petition for custody of. Margaret leaned closer, close enough that Lisa could smell her perfume, something expensive and floral that probably cost more than Lisa's car payment. You have no idea what I am capable of. Enjoy your little moment, dear. Savor it, because I promise you, it will not last. She stepped back, smiled, the kind of smile that has nothing to do with warmth and everything to do with warning. Lisa walked to her car on legs she could not feel. She helped the twins into their seats with hands that would not stop trembling. She buckled seatbelts and checked mirrors and performed all the mechanical functions of a mother on autopilot, while her mind raced through the implications of what had just happened. She had come here to take control of a narrative, to give her children the chance to know their father on her terms. Instead, she had walked into a war. She drove 2 blocks from the Gray estate, pulled to the curb, pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, and cried, not from sadness, from fear. Pure, primal, bone-deep fear. The kind of fear that comes when you realize that the person threatening you has the resources and the ruthlessness and the complete absence of conscience required to follow through. Margaret Gray was not bluffing. Lisa knew that with absolute certainty. Whatever Margaret was planning, it would be surgical, calculated, designed to destroy not just Lisa, but everything she had built. She sat there for 3 minutes. Let the fear wash through her. Let it peak and crest and begin to recede. Then she wiped her face, checked her makeup in the mirror, looked at her sleeping children in the back seat. I did not build everything I have just to let that woman take it from me, she whispered. She put the car in drive and headed back to the hotel. Tomorrow she would begin preparing for whatever came next. The next 2 weeks established patterns that would determine everything that followed. Joseph called the twins every night at 7. Lisa supervised from the next room, close enough to intervene if the conversation went wrong, but far enough to give the children space to form their own opinions. The calls went smoothly, better than Lisa expected. Joseph was careful with his words, patient with Aaron's skepticism, genuinely delighted by Avery's openness. He asked real questions and remembered the answers. He learned that Aaron was obsessed with the engineering principles behind bridges and skyscrapers. He learned that Avery was writing what she described as a very important novel about a dragon queen named Thornfire who loses her kingdom and has to build a new one from scratch. Avery had explained the entire plot during their third phone call. Joseph had listened for 20 minutes without interrupting, asking thoughtful questions about character motivation and plot structure. Lisa, listening from the hallway, had been reluctantly impressed. "Can you take us on a ship sometime?" Aaron asked during the fourth call. His voice was carefully casual, but Lisa could hear the hope underneath. Joseph had been describing the container ships that Gray Enterprises used for global shipping, and Aaron was transfixed. Joseph looked through the phone screen at Lisa, a question in his eyes. "Maybe someday," Lisa said. "Not yes. Not no. All she could offer right now." The first in-person visit happened 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. Joseph flew to Portland, checked into a hotel, texted Lisa that he had arrived. They met at a park near Lisa's house. Neutral territory, public space. Lisa had mapped every exit in advance, old habits from a woman who had learned to always have an escape route. But nothing went wrong. Joseph arrived 15 minutes early. Lisa watched from her car as he paced near the entrance, checking his phone, obviously nervous. The man who commanded boardrooms and testified before congressional committees without breaking a sweat was visibly terrified of 2 6-year-olds. Good, Lisa thought. He should be terrified. This matters more than any deal he has ever made. The twins spotted him first. "There he is," Avery pointed. "He looks nervous." "He probably is," Lisa admitted. "Why would meeting us be scary?" Aaron asked. "Because he wants you to like him, and he knows he has a lot to make up for." They walked toward Joseph together. Lisa stayed slightly behind the twins, letting them set the pace. "Him." Joseph's voice was careful. "Thank you for meeting me. You came all the way from New York," Avery observed. "That is far." "Not that far," Joseph smiled. "Just a few hours on a plane." They spent 3 hours at the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. Joseph and Aaron vanished into the engineering section almost immediately, and Lisa could hear Aaron's voice carrying through the exhibits with an excitement he usually reserved for conversations with his mother. The center of gravity of the Space Needle is only 5 feet above ground level, Aaron was explaining. That is why it does not fall over. Most people think tall things are unstable, but it is actually about weight distribution. That is exactly right. Joseph sounded genuinely impressed. Most engineers twice your age do not understand that concept. Most people do not pay attention. Aaron's voice carried the casual superiority of a 6-year-old who knew he was smarter than most adults. "You sound like your mother." Aaron considered this for a moment. "Good," he said. "My mama is the smartest person I know." Lisa followed with Avery, who narrated elaborate stories about every exhibit they passed. "That dinosaur looks sad," Avery observed in front of a Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton. "I think it misses its family." "Dinosaurs probably did have families," Lisa agreed. "Like we are trying to have now," Avery said. "A family, with Joseph in it." Lisa's heart clenched. "Yes, baby, like we are trying to do." Afterward, Joseph sat beside Lisa on a park bench while the twins played on a nearby climbing structure, close enough to talk, far enough to maintain the distance Lisa required. "You did an amazing job with them," Joseph said. "I know I keep saying that, but I cannot get over how incredible they are." "I know. I am sorry I was not there. Sorry does not give you back the 2 a.m. feedings or the NICU or the first steps. Sorry is just a word, Joseph. I need more than words." He nodded, accepted this, did not push for more than she was willing to give. What Lisa did not mention was that Derek Hale was sitting in his car in the parking lot. He had driven her here. He had offered to stay nearby in case things went wrong. He had watched through the windshield as Joseph Gray walked into the museum with his children, and he had said nothing. But Lisa had seen the way his jaw tightened. 3 months of consistent presence. Joseph flew to Portland every other weekend, called the twins 3 times a week, remembered details from previous conversations, asked follow-up questions, treated their interests with the same seriousness he brought to everything in his professional life. He learned that Aaron wanted to design bridges when he grew up, that Avery's novel had expanded to 200 handwritten pages, that they both loved pizza but disagreed violently about toppings, that Aaron was allergic to cats but desperately wanted a dog, that Avery talked in her sleep sometimes, narrating adventures that continued the stories she had been telling during the day. He was showing up, consistently, without excuses, without the particular unreliability that Lisa had expected from a man who had historically chosen convenience over commitment. The test came 3 months in, a critical board meeting, a billion-dollar acquisition that required Joseph's presence and attention. Scheduled for the same weekend, he had promised to take the twins to the Natural History Museum. Margaret called him. Lisa was in the room when he answered. "This meeting cannot be rescheduled," Margaret said through the phone speaker. "The acquisition depends on your presence. Hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake." Joseph did not hesitate. "Not for a second. Not for a fraction of a second. The meeting can wait. Excuse me, I made a commitment to my children. The meeting can be handled by the team. I have briefed them thoroughly. If the deal falls through because I was not personally in the room, then it was not a strong enough deal to begin with." Margaret's voice went cold. "You are choosing those illegitimate. Call them that again, and this conversation is over. Permanently." "Joseph, be reasonable. I am being reasonable for the first time in years. Goodbye, Mother." He hung up, turned to Lisa with an expression that mixed determination with genuine fear. "That may have cost me the company. She controls a significant portion of the board if she decides to retaliate." Lisa looked at him, really looked, and she felt something she had not felt in 7 years. A wall she had built to protect herself developing its first hairline fracture. He had chosen them, not with words, not with promises, with action, with consequence, with the willingness to sacrifice something real. She told Derek about it the next morning, over coffee at the office. "I think he might actually be different," she said. Derek stirred his coffee with careful deliberation. "I hope so, Lisa. You deserve someone who stays." The weight of what he did not say hung in the air between them like smoke. Lisa heard it. She knew what Derek felt. she had known for over a year, but she was not ready to address it, and he was too decent to force the issue. The weekend at the museum was everything Lisa had been afraid to hope for. Aaron and Joseph spent 2 hours in the geology section arguing about the engineering implications of different rock formations. Avery made Joseph read 3 chapters of her dragon novel aloud and then critiqued his character voices. Lisa watched from across the room and allowed herself, for the first time in 7 years, to think the word family without flinching. She should not have relaxed. Monday morning, 6:45 a.m. Lisa pulled into the parking lot of her flagship clinic, coffee in one hand, her mind already running through the day's patient schedule. 2 people were waiting at the front door, a man and a woman, both in the business attire, both holding clipboards, both wearing the particular expression of government officials who were not there to ask questions, but to deliver verdicts. Lisa Moore, the woman said, State Health Division, we are here regarding an anonymous complaint filed against your facilities. Allegations of billing fraud, unsafe patient practices, and regulatory violations across all 6 of your clinics. Lisa's coffee went cold in her hand. Your accounts have been frozen pending investigation. All patient intake is suspended effective immediately. We will need access to your records for the past 3 years. Her accounts. Frozen. 6 clinics. 83 employees who depended on her for their paychecks. 7 years of work, of sacrifice, of sleeping 2 hours a night, and skipping meals and choosing her career over everything else. Because her children needed a mother who could provide for them. Paralyzed. Overnight. By an anonymous complaint. Her lawyer confirmed it within hours. The complaint was surgical. Detailed, specific, filed by someone with inside knowledge of healthcare regulatory systems and unlimited resources to fund the kind of investigation that would take months to resolve, even if every allegation proved baseless. Lisa called Joseph. Did you tell your mother where I work? The silence on his end lasted 3 seconds. 3 seconds that told her everything she needed to know before he said a word. She asked about your career. Joseph's voice was hollow. I thought she was making an effort, trying to understand your life. I did not think. You did not think. Lisa's voice was ice. That is the problem, Joseph. You never think about the consequences until someone else is paying for them. She hung up. Midnight. Her office. Papers everywhere. Legal documents and regulatory filings and financial projections that showed exactly how long her clinics could survive with frozen accounts. The answer was not long. 4 weeks, maybe 6, before she would have to start laying off staff. 8 weeks before the clinics themselves would have to close. 7 years. 7 years of building something from nothing, and Margaret Gray had dismantled it with a phone call. Derek found her there. He did not knock, just walked in, sat down beside her, opened his laptop, and started working on the legal response. We will fight this, he said. What if we cannot win? She hated the weakness in her voice. She has unlimited resources. I have a legal budget that would not cover her monthly dry cleaning. Then we get creative. That is what you do, Lisa. You solve problems other people cannot see. You have been doing it since you told a billionaire he was routing his shipments wrong. She leaned against his shoulder, just for a moment, just because she was exhausted and terrified, and he was there. He was always there. Derek said nothing. He did not need to. His presence was the statement. The man who never left, sitting beside her at midnight, working to save something he had helped her build, asking for nothing in return. 3 weeks of fighting the regulatory complaint consumed everything Lisa had. Sleepless nights reviewing financial records, legal bills that ate through savings she had spent years accumulating. 2 of her best employees quit because they could not handle the uncertainty, and Lisa could not blame them. She would have quit too if quitting had ever been an option she allowed herself. The clinics operated on a skeleton basis, limited patient intake, reduced hours, her employees showing up every day with fear in their eyes and questions she could not answer. How long will this last? Are we going to be okay? Should we start looking for other jobs? I do not know, Lisa told them honestly. I am fighting as hard as I can. That is all I can promise. Then Catherine Gray called. Lisa had not spoken to Catherine since Thanksgiving night, had not wanted to. Catherine was a Gray, and the Grays had proven themselves to be exactly what Lisa had always suspected, a family that valued control over compassion and legacy over love. But Catherine's voice on the phone was shaking. And what she said changed everything. Lisa, I have to tell you something. My mother hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago. She is building a custody case. She plans to file for emergency guardianship of the twins, claiming you are an unfit mother based on the fraud investigation she manufactured. Lisa sat down slowly, the words processing one at a time. Private investigator, custody case, emergency guardianship, unfit mother. She created the complaint so she could use it to take my children. Yes, Catherine's voice cracked. And there is more. Victoria Ashford is helping her. Victoria has a clause in a prenuptial agreement. If she marries Joseph within a certain contractual window, she receives $200 million. My mother promised to deliver Joseph back to Victoria if Victoria helped eliminate you from the picture. $200 million. That was the price tag on Lisa's destruction. That was what her life and her children's lives were worth to these people. A financial incentive and a contract written by lawyers who had never met her children and never would. Catherine. Lisa's voice was dangerously quiet. How long have you known about this? About the custody plan? 3 weeks. 3 weeks. You knew for 3 weeks that someone was trying to take my children, and you said nothing. I was gathering evidence. I wanted to have proof before, Catherine. That is not what I am asking. How long have you known things about my life that you chose not to share? The silence on the other end was different now. Not hesitation. Shame. Lisa, there's something else. Something I should have told you a long time ago. 7 years ago, about a month after you left New York, I was at a hospital for a charity event, and I saw you in the waiting room. You were sitting in the prenatal wing. I could see. I knew you were pregnant. The air left Lisa's lungs like she had been punched. You knew. I wanted to tell Joseph. I swear I did. But my mother would have found out. She would have come after you before you had any way to protect yourself. You had nothing, Lisa. No money, no lawyer, no support system. If Margaret had known about a pregnancy, she would have destroyed you to get to those children. You let me go through 7 years alone. Lisa's voice was barely a whisper, and it cut deeper than any shout. Premature twins in the NICU, choosing between food and electricity, working double shifts, so sick I could barely stand. Sleeping 2 hours a night because that was all the time I had. You knew, and you said nothing. I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. Lisa hung up, set the phone on her desk, stared at the wall. She had always told herself that Catherine was different, that at least one member of the Gray family had a conscience, that at least one of them had looked at her and seen a person instead of a problem. But Catherine had seen her in a hospital, pregnant and alone and terrified, and she had walked away. Every single member of that family, Joseph who abandoned her, Margaret who was trying to destroy her, Catherine who watched her drown and chose not to throw a rope. Cowards, all of them, dressed in expensive clothes, making excuses for why someone else's suffering was not their responsibility. Lisa sat alone in her office for a long time after that phone call. She did not cry. She was past crying. She was somewhere beyond tears, in a cold, clear space where the only thing that existed was the fundamental question of what she was going to do next. She was going to fight. That had never been in question. But now she understood exactly what she was fighting against. Not just Margaret, not just Victoria. She was fighting an entire system, a machine built of money and influence and the casual cruelty of people who believed their wealth entitled them to control other people's lives. And she was going to tear that machine apart. Joseph learned about Margaret's custody plot the same day Lisa did. His reaction was volcanic. He flew to New York that night, confronted Margaret at the Gray estate. Lisa was not present, but Catherine reported every detail afterward. You filed a fraudulent regulatory complaint against the mother of my children to manufacture grounds for taking them away from her. I am protecting this family's legacy, Margaret said, and protecting you from a woman who is clearly manipulating, protecting me. Joseph's voice dropped to something dangerous. You destroyed her career. You are trying to take her children. You weaponized the legal system against a woman whose only crime was loving your son. That is not protection, Mother. That is warfare. He did not wait for her response. He called an emergency board meeting, presented evidence of the fraudulent complaint, documented the connection between Margaret's private investigator and the anonymous filing, forced a vote to remove Margaret from the board entirely. The vote passed 7-4. Margaret Gray, who had controlled Gray Enterprises from behind the scenes for 3 decades, lost her seat. Her power base crumbled in a single afternoon. Joseph flew to Portland, stood on Lisa's doorstep at 10 at night. Rain soaking through his suit because he had not bothered with an umbrella. She's off the board, he said. The complaint is being withdrawn. Your accounts will be unfrozen by Friday. The custody petition will never be filed. Lisa stared at him, water dripping from his hair onto her doormat. His suit ruined. His career potentially destroyed. All because he had finally, after 7 years, chosen correctly. And Catherine, Lisa said, did you know she saw me at that hospital 7 years ago? Joseph's face went white. What? Your sister saw me in the prenatal wing. She knew I was pregnant. She said nothing for 7 years. Lisa, I swear to you, I had no idea. I believe you. But I need you to understand something, Joseph. Every single person in your family, you, your mother, your sister, every one of you either abandoned me or watched me struggle and chose to do nothing. Every single one. He had no answer, because there was no answer that could make 7 years of silence acceptable. For 1 week after Margaret's removal, everything seemed safe. The investigation was closing. Lisa's accounts were unfreezing. Her clinics were reopening. Joseph was present and consistent and making all the right choices. Lisa almost let herself believe that the worst was over. She should have known better. In the Gray family, losing power did not mean accepting defeat. It meant changing tactics. Victoria Ashford, furious about Margaret's removal from the board, decided to take matters into her own hands. If she could not get Joseph through Margaret's machinations, she would burn everything down and rebuild from the ashes. She went to the press. The headline appeared on a Tuesday morning. New York Post, front page of the entertainment section. Bold letters that Lisa would remember for the rest of her life. Billionaire's secret children. The waitress who trapped Joseph Gray. The article was a masterpiece of destruction. It painted Lisa as a calculating gold digger who had deliberately gotten pregnant to trap a billionaire, who had hidden the children for 6 years as leverage, who had resurfaced the moment Joseph's Senate campaign made him vulnerable to extortion. Direct quotes from sources close to the family. Photographs of Lisa's old studio apartment placed side by side with images of the Gray estate. A narrative so carefully constructed that it almost sounded true. Almost. If you did not know the real story. If you did not know that every single claim in it was a lie designed to protect a $200 million prenup clause. The story went viral. Millions of views within hours. Comment sections filling with the particular cruelty that the internet reserves for women who are perceived to have stepped above their station. Gold digger, trap queen, how original of her, getting pregnant by a billionaire. Lisa's clinic, website, crashed. Not from supporters, from people posting threats and insults. Her receptionist quit that afternoon, unable to handle the phone calls from strangers demanding to know if their healthcare provider was a fraud. Then the catastrophes came, one after another, like dominoes falling. The first was financial. Lisa's largest donor, a healthcare foundation that provided 40% of her operating budget, pulled their funding. The phone call lasted 90 seconds. "We cannot be associated with this kind of controversy," the foundation director said. "I am sorry, Lisa. Our board's decision is final." Half her operating budget. Gone. In the time it took to have a conversation shorter than most coffee orders. The second catastrophe hit closer to home. Aaron came home from school on the first day after the article went viral, quieter than usual. He did not eat dinner. He did not show Lisa his latest bridge design. He went to his room and closed the door. Not slammed, closed. Which was worse because Aaron only got quiet when something was truly wrong. Day 2, he asked a question over breakfast that made Lisa's blood run cold. "Mama, what does gold digger mean?" "Where did you hear that word?" Lisa asked carefully. "School." Day 3, Aaron locked his bedroom door. Lisa knocked, called his name, got nothing but silence. She finally used a pin to pop the lock, a skill she had learned during the twins' toddler years when Avery had locked herself in the bathroom 3 times in 1 week. Aaron was sitting on his bed. A school iPad open in front of him. The article on the screen, every word, every photograph, every comment. A classmate's parent had shared it in a group chat. Their kid had seen it, shown it to Aaron at recess. He looked up at his mother, 6 years old, his father's jaw, his mother's eyes, and he asked the question that would haunt Lisa for the rest of her life. "Did you trap him, Mama? Is that why he did not want us?" Lisa's knees buckled. She caught herself on the doorframe, held herself upright through sheer force of will, because collapsing in front of her son would confirm every fear his question contained. "No, baby. No, that is not what happened." "Then why does the article say?" "Because sometimes people lie to hurt other people." Lisa knelt beside his bed, took his hands, looked into eyes that were the same shape and color as the man who had broken her heart. "The person who wrote that article wanted to hurt me, but the truth, the real truth, is that your father and I loved each other, and you and Avery were made from that love. Nothing anyone writes in any article, anywhere, changes that." Aaron studied her face with the analytical intensity he brought to everything, processing, evaluating, deciding whether to believe her. Then he closed the iPad, turned to face the wall, and said in a voice so small it barely qualified as sound, "I do not want to go to school anymore." Lisa held her son, pressed her face against his hair, and felt something inside her that had survived 7 years of poverty and exhaustion and loneliness finally crack, not break. She would not let it break, but crack. A fracture deep enough to let the fear in. The third catastrophe came 48 hours later. Lisa held it together through pure survival instinct, managed the donor crisis, comforted both twins, coordinated with lawyers who were now billing hours she could not afford, did not sleep, did not eat, ran on caffeine and the particular fuel that mothers generate when their children are threatened. On the third day, her body simply stopped. She was standing in her office reviewing a financial projection when the room tilted sideways. Her vision narrowed to a pinpoint. Her legs dissolved beneath her. She hit the floor before she could even reach for the desk. She woke up in a hospital bed. The doctor was kind, mid-50s, gentle eyes behind reading glasses, the sort of physician who had learned that delivering bad news required the same precision as surgery. Cut clean, do not linger. Miss Moore, when was the last time you had a comprehensive physical examination? I do not remember. Your blood work shows severe anemia, chronic malnutrition markers. Your cortisol levels are roughly 3 times the normal range. Your adrenal system is essentially in a state of permanent emergency. Additionally, we found a mass in your abdomen, likely benign, but it requires surgical removal. Promptly. Lisa lay in that hospital bed and felt the weight of 7 years finally land on her chest. 7 years of pushing a human body past every limit it possessed. 7 years of 2-hour sleep cycles and skipped meals and stress hormones flooding her system every single day. Her body had been sending warnings for years. She had ignored all of them because stopping was never an option, because her children needed her functional, because the clinics needed her present, because survival did not include rest days. And now the bill had arrived. Now, I want to pause here for a moment, because this is the part of the story where it would be easy to feel hopeless, where it would be natural to think that the universe has stacked the deck too heavily against Lisa Moore, that no one person should have to fight this many battles on this many fronts simultaneously. And you would be right. No one should have to carry this alone. But here's what I have learned from telling stories about people who refuse to be defeated. The moment when everything seems lost is not the end of the story. It is the pivot. It is the point where the person you thought you were gets stripped away and the person you actually are stands up. Lisa Moore was about to stand up in ways that no one, not Margaret Gray, not Victoria Ashford, not even Lisa herself, could have predicted. Joseph was in New York, trying to contain the media damage. He did not know Lisa was in the hospital. Derek did. Derek was sitting beside her bed at 2 in the morning, a legal pad in his lap filled with notes he had written while she slept, a cup of coffee growing cold on the side table because he had forgotten about it 3 hours ago. Your clinics will survive, he said when she opened her eyes. I have been making calls. 3 new donor commitments, smaller amounts, but enough to bridge the gap until the full investigation closes. Derek. The legal team says the defamation case is strong. Victoria's quotes to the reporter are directly traceable. Derek. Stop. He stopped. Why are you here? He looked at her. Really looked. Not the way a colleague looks at a business partner. Not the way a friend looks at a friend, the way a man looks at the woman he loves when she is lying in a hospital bed because she spent 7 years carrying the world alone. Where else would I be? Lisa. He set down the legal pad. I need to tell you something, and the timing is terrible, and I know that. But if your body is telling you that you have been carrying too much alone for too long, then maybe it is time someone said this out loud. He leaned forward. I love you. I have loved you for 3 years. I have never said it because you were not ready, and I would rather be your friend forever than make you uncomfortable for 1 second. But you are lying in a hospital bed because you spent 7 years proving you do not need anyone, and I am sitting here because I need you to know that you do not have to prove that anymore. Not to me. Derek, I am not asking for anything. I am not asking you to choose me. I am telling you that whatever happens, with Joseph, with the clinics, with any of this, I am here. I've been here for 3 years. I am not going anywhere. That is not a promise about the future. It is a fact about the past. Lisa looked at this man, this steady, reliable, consistent man who had never lied to her, never chosen a boardroom over her, never made a promise he could not keep, who sat beside her hospital bed at 2 in the morning because that was simply what he did. He showed up. She said nothing, because she did not have an answer yet, but she heard every word, and every word mattered. Lisa spent 3 days in that hospital bed, 3 days of staring at the ceiling and taking stock of everything that had been done to her and everything she had left to fight with. The inventory was not encouraging. Clinics hemorrhaging money, children traumatized, reputation shredded, body failing. The two most powerful women she had ever encountered, Margaret Gray and Victoria Ashford, actively working to destroy her. And the man she had once loved, who was trying to prove he had changed, currently 3,000 miles away dealing with a crisis he had inadvertently helped create. She had every reason to give up, to take the twins and disappear again. Portland to somewhere new. Somewhere the Gray family name meant nothing. Somewhere she could rebuild in peace. But Lisa Moore had learned something about herself in the 7 years since Joseph Gray had broken her heart. She had learned that she was not the kind of woman who disappeared. Not anymore. She picked up her phone, called her lawyer. "I want to file suit," she said. "Defamation, fraud, tortious interference with business operations, conspiracy, against Margaret Gray and Victoria Ashford. Personally. Not the company, not the estate. Them. And I want every piece of evidence Catherine Gray has provided entered into the record. Lisa, these are powerful people with essentially unlimited legal budgets. I know exactly who they are. I have been surviving them for 7 years. File it." She hung up, looked at Derek, who was still in the chair beside her bed. "I am going to need your help running the clinics while I recover from this surgery. Already started. And Derek, what you said the other night. You do not have to respond to that. Not now. Not ever. I know. But I want you to know I heard every word, and it matters more than I can tell you right now." He nodded, accepted this without pushing, because that was who Derek Hale was. A man who understood that love was not about demanding answers. It was about being present while someone found theirs. The surgery happened 3 days later. Successful. The mass was benign, but the doctor's words echoed long after the anesthesia wore off. "You cannot continue living in survival mode, Ms. Moore. Your body has been running on emergency reserves for years. If you do not make fundamental changes to how you handle stress and self-care, the next crisis your body creates may not be benign." While Lisa recovered, her legal team went to work. Catherine Gray provided a sworn affidavit documenting everything: Margaret's hiring of the private investigator, the fraudulent regulatory complaint, the coordination with Victoria Ashford, the manufactured custody petition, the deliberate press leak, every email, every payment, every conversation Catherine had witnessed or participated in. Catherine also testified to her own failures. The hospital waiting room 7 years ago. The pregnant woman she recognized and walked away from. The 7 years of silence she had maintained because courage was harder than complicity. The evidence was released strategically, first to Lisa's legal team, then to the court, then, carefully and deliberately, to the press. The headlines flipped overnight. Gray family matriarch orchestrated fraud campaign to steal grandchildren. Victoria Ashford's $200 million prenup scheme exposed. The waitress who refused to break. The same comment sections that had called Lisa a gold digger 3 weeks earlier were now calling her a warrior. The same people who had threatened her clinics were now booking appointments. The narrative had not just shifted, it had reversed completely. Joseph was subpoenaed to testify against his own mother. He did not fight it, did not negotiate for a sealed proceeding or a private settlement, did not ask his lawyers to find a way around it. He walked into a public courtroom, sat in the witness chair, and looked across the room at the woman who had controlled his life for 35 years. "Did your mother instruct you to end your relationship with Lisa Moore 7 years ago?" the attorney asked. "She made it clear that Lisa was unacceptable, that the board would not approve my CEO appointment if I maintained the relationship. And you complied." "Yes," Joseph's voice broke on the word. "To my everlasting shame, I complied. I chose a corner office over the woman I loved, and she paid for my cowardice for 7 years. Did your mother subsequently orchestrate a fraudulent regulatory complaint against Ms. Moore's healthcare clinics?" "Yes." "Did she manufacture grounds for a custody petition designed to remove your children from their mother's care?" "Yes." "Did she coordinate with Victoria Ashford to plant a defamatory story in the press?" "Yes." Each answer landed like a hammer. Each yes stripped away another layer of Margaret Gray's carefully constructed power. She sat motionless through all of it. Pearls still expensive, spine still straight. But the invisible force that had controlled boardrooms and shaped family decisions for decades was visibly leaving her body. Joseph's testimony had consequences beyond the courtroom. Gray Enterprises stock dropped 38% in 2 days. The board called an emergency session. The vote was swift and decisive. Joseph Gray was removed as CEO. 7-3. The company his father had built, the empire he had chosen over Lisa 7 years ago, the legacy that was supposed to justify every sacrifice he had made, gone. He called Lisa from the parking lot of Gray Enterprises headquarters, the building he had first entered at 18 years old, the building he would never enter again as anything more than a visitor. "The board removed me," he said. Lisa was quiet for a moment. "How do you feel?" He thought about it. Really thought about it. Not the way a CEO processes market data, but the way a man processes the loss of something he had built his entire identity around. "Free," he said, and he meant it. 7 years ago, Joseph Gray had chosen an empire over the woman he loved. Now he had lost that empire because he had finally chosen correctly. The thing he had sacrificed Lisa for, the thing that was supposed to be worth the destruction of the only real relationship he had ever had, was gone. And the only emotion he could find beneath the shock was relief. The universe collects its debts, and sometimes the payment schedule has a poetry to it that feels almost intentional. The court ruling came down 3 weeks later. Every count against Margaret Gray. Guilty, defamation, fraud, conspiracy, tortious interference with business operations. $15 million in damages awarded to Lisa Moore, personally, against Victoria Ashford, guilty on all counts. The prenup voided entirely. The $200 million clause exposed as the foundation of a criminal conspiracy. Victoria left the courtroom with nothing. No money, no social standing, no connections. The woman who had dismissed Lisa with a single glance at a charity gala was now the subject of the very scandal she had tried to create. Margaret walked out of the courthouse alone, no son beside her, no grandchildren to claim, no board seat to return to, no allies remaining. The woman who had destroyed careers with a phone call discovered that her phone no longer rang. She moved to a smaller property upstate. Catherine called once a month. Margaret never answered. She would spend her remaining years in the particular prison reserved for people who controlled everything and ended up with nothing. No redemption arc, no reconciliation scene, just silence and expensive furniture in empty rooms. Victoria disappeared from New York society within weeks, changed her number, deleted her social media, relocated to a mid-sized city where nobody recognized her name. The appropriate woman from the appropriate family discovered that appropriateness was worthless when the truth was on the table. 2 weeks after the verdict, Lisa received an invitation to speak at a regional healthcare leadership conference. 500 attendees. She almost declined. The surgery recovery was still fresh. The media attention still overwhelming. Derek convinced her to go. "Those people need to see you standing," he said. She walked onto that stage, 500 faces looking up at her, some with admiration, some with curiosity, some with the particular expression of people who had read tabloids and were waiting to see if the real person matched the headline. Lisa did not talk about the lawsuit, did not talk about Joseph, did not talk about Margaret or Victoria or any of it. 7 years ago, she said, I was a waitress with a nursing school textbook and a positive pregnancy test. I had no money, no support, no plan except survival. And I built 6 clinics that serve 4,000 patients every month. Not because I am special, because I showed up every single day when no one was watching, when no one was helping, when every rational reason said quit." She paused. Let the silence work. 3 months ago, someone tried to take all of that away from me. They filed false complaints. They planted stories. They tried to use my children as leverage. They assumed that because I came from nothing, I could be reduced to nothing. Her voice did not waver. They were wrong, not because I had money or connections or a famous last name. They were wrong because you cannot destroy something that was built by a woman who already survived the worst thing that could happen to her and decided to keep going anyway. She looked out at the audience. If you are in this room and you have ever been told you are not good enough, not polished enough, not connected enough, not appropriate enough for someone else's world, I need you to hear me. Their opinion of you is not your destiny. Your response to their opinion is, build something they cannot tear down. Then let them try. 500 people stood. The ovation lasted 2 full minutes. The video spread across social media within hours. The woman the internet had called a gold digger was now being called something very different. A fighter, a builder, a queen who earned her crown the hard way. Lisa recovered. Slowly, the surgery was successful. The mass was benign, but the lesson it carried was permanent. She could not keep treating her body like a machine that did not require maintenance. She restructured everything, delegated responsibilities she had hoarded for years, hired an operations director to handle the daily management she had been doing herself, started sleeping more than 4 hours, started eating meals that were not consumed standing up between patient consultations. Let Derek handle the business side when she needed to rest without treating it as a personal failure. She learned, slowly and with considerable resistance, that accepting help was not the same as admitting weakness, that needing people was not the same as being unable to function without them, that strength and vulnerability could exist in the same body, the same heart, the same breath. Joseph moved to Portland permanently 6 months after losing the company, not as a billionaire returning in triumph, as a man who had lost the thing he had valued most and discovered it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. He transferred what remained of his business responsibilities to Catherine, who stepped into the CEO role with a precision and emotional intelligence that neither her father nor her brother had ever managed. Gray Enterprises, under Catherine's leadership, would eventually recover its stock price and its reputation, but it would be a different company, one that valued people over profit margins. Catherine made sure of that. Joseph bought a craftsman-style house in a quiet Portland neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, a yard, nothing extravagant. A room for Aaron with built-in bookshelves and a drafting table positioned to catch the morning light. A room for Avery painted lavender with a window seat that overlooked a garden. "Did you plan the angle of this drafting table?" Aaron asked during the first walkthrough. His voice was careful, evaluating. "I asked some architect friends what a serious young designer would need," Joseph said. "They helped me get it right." Aaron ran his hand across the surface, tested the angle, assessed the quality. "Thank you," he said quietly. It was the first time Aaron had thanked Joseph for anything without being prompted. Lisa, watching from the doorway, felt her heart do something complicated that she was not quite ready to name. The conversation with Derek happened on a Sunday afternoon. The twins were at Joseph's house for the weekend, a routine that had become normal over the preceding months. Lisa and Derek were at the office working on an expansion proposal. "Lisa," Derek said. She could hear it in his voice, the weight of something he had been carrying for months. "Have you made a decision?" She set down her pen. She owed him honesty. He had earned that, and so much more. Derek. "You are the best man I know." She said it directly because that was what he deserved. Not hedging, not softening. Direct truth from one person to another. "You have been more consistent, more present, more reliable than anyone in my entire life. You showed up when he did not. You stayed when it was hard. You loved me without ever once asking for anything in return. I hear a but coming. It is not a but. It is a truth I wish were different. You deserve someone whose whole heart is available, not someone giving you what is left over after someone else broke it." "You think I would be getting leftovers?" "I think you would be getting a woman who chose you because you were safe. And you deserve better than that, Derek. You deserve someone who chooses you because you set her on fire, not because you are the man who will never hurt her. You deserve your own Lisa Moore, not a version of her that is too damaged to love the complicated way." Derek was quiet for a long time, long enough that Lisa could hear the building's ventilation system humming, long enough that the silence became its own kind of communication. "You are choosing him," Derek said finally. "I am choosing to try. With the full knowledge that it might destroy me again, but I would rather take that risk than spend the rest of my life wondering what if. And I would rather be honest with you than pretend I can offer something I cannot. He better not waste it. If he does, I will not need a second lesson." Derek stood, pulled her into a hug that lasted exactly long enough to say everything that words could not carry. "I am still your business partner," he said into her hair. "I am counting on that, and if he ever hurts you, you will be the second to know, right after my lawyer." He laughed. It almost sounded genuine, almost. Close enough that she could pretend it was. He walked out of the office, and Lisa watched him go and felt the particular grief of hurting a good person in order to be honest. It did not feel noble. It did not feel like the right choice, triumphantly prevailing. It felt like the cost of being alive and imperfect and human. 1 year passed. Lisa's clinics thrived. The publicity from the lawsuit tripled her patient base. Women across 3 states requesting appointments because they wanted to be treated by the woman who had fought back and won. Derek found someone, a pediatrician named Rachel, who laughed at his terrible jokes and looked at him the way he deserved to be looked at. He brought her to the clinic holiday party. Lisa watched them together and felt genuine happiness for a man who had finally gotten what he had always deserved. Aaron started a junior engineering program. He built model bridges that could support 40 times their own weight. He called Joseph for help with structural calculations, voluntarily, without prompting. The conversations lasted hours. Avery published her first short story in a children's literary magazine, a fantasy about a dragon queen who lost her kingdom and built a new one from the ground up. The dedication page read, "For my mom, who did it first." Catherine ran Gray Enterprises with steady hands and a clear conscience. She and Lisa talked every Sunday. The relationship was genuine, but it carried a scar that both of them could feel. Catherine's 7 years of silence was forgiven. It was not forgotten. Some fractures heal completely. Others just stop hurting. The proposal happened on an ordinary Thursday evening. Nothing special about the day. No anniversary, no milestone, just a kitchen with dinner dishes in the sink, and Avery's manuscript pages scattered across the table, and Aaron's latest bridge model drying on the counter. Joseph got down on one knee. The twins appeared from behind the kitchen island with matching grins they had been suppressing for approximately 72 hours. 7 years ago, Joseph said, I made the worst mistake of my life. I chose a corner office over the woman who loved me. I lost you. I lost them. And then I lost the company I chose instead of you. And I discovered that losing it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Lisa was crying. She did not try to stop it. You gave me a chance I did not deserve, Joseph continued. You let me prove that I could be different. You let me become the father I should have been from the start. Will you let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it? Say yes, Mama. Avery could not contain herself another second. We held a vote, and it was unanimous. 2-0, Aaron confirmed. Dad recused himself from his own proposal. He said it would be a conflict of interest. Lisa laughed through her tears. The sound surprised her. Joy and grief and relief and the particular emotion that comes when something you thought was permanently broken turns out to have been healing all along. Yes, she said. The ring was simple, elegant, nothing like what a billionaire would have chosen. Perfect for what a man who had lost everything and found what actually mattered would give. The wedding happened 6 months later. Small, 50 guests. In the backyard of the house that had become their home. Purple flowers everywhere, because Avery had declared this a non-negotiable condition. And Lisa had learned long ago that negotiating with Avery on matters of aesthetic vision was a losing proposition. An archway designed by Aaron, engineered to withstand what he described as a Category 3 hurricane, because structural integrity matters, even at weddings. Lisa's mother came from the small town where Lisa had grown up, met her grandchildren for the first time, cried through the entire ceremony. And half of the reception, Derek and Rachel sat in the third row, his arm around her shoulders, a man who had found his own happy ending with someone who chose him because he set her on fire, not because he was safe. Catherine gave a toast that was equal parts laughter and tears. She talked about second chances and the courage to speak up and the particular strength required to admit when you have been wrong. Clinic staff, school friends, neighbors who had watched Lisa build her empire one impossible day at a time, the community she had created when she had nothing but determination and 2 small children who needed her to be everything. No one from the Gray family except Catherine, no Margaret, no board members, no society photographers, just people who had chosen to be there, people who had stayed. Lisa's vows were simple. I spent 7 years learning how to survive without you, she said. Now I am choosing to live with you. I am choosing trust over walls, risk over safety. I am choosing you. Not because I need you, because I want you, and I am choosing this family. Every complicated, imperfect, hard-won piece of it. Joseph's vows matched hers in simplicity. "I do not deserve this," he said. "I know that. You know that. Everyone standing in this yard knows that. But you taught me something I spent 35 years and $1 billion failing to learn. The only thing worth having is something you cannot buy. So I am not promising you wealth or status or any of the things I used to think mattered. I am promising you Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings and every ordinary moment in between. I am promising to stay." Aaron leaned toward his sister. "This is very romantic," he whispered, "and also very gross." "I like it," Avery whispered back. "It is like the ending of my book. Except there are no dragons." "There could be dragons," Joseph said, because he had been listening. "No dragons," Lisa said. But her smile said she had not entirely ruled it out. 10 years after the wedding, Lisa stood on the porch of their home and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. Joseph brought her a glass of wine. There was gray at his temples now, lines around his eyes, but the way he looked at her had not changed since that dining room doorway. Aaron was at MIT, 16 years old and already designing structures that his professors called visionary. He had built a pedestrian bridge for his school campus that the city actually constructed. He still called his father for help with structural calculations. Still protected his mother, like it was his first and most important job. Avery had published her first novel at 17, The Dragon Queen's Second Kingdom, a fantasy epic about a queen who loses everything and builds a new kingdom from the ashes of the old one. The dedication page read, "For the mother who built a kingdom from nothing, and the father who burned his down to earn his way into hers." Derek and Rachel had a daughter. He and Lisa still ran the clinic network together. 14 facilities now across 4 states. He never told anyone about what had passed between them in that hospital room. Some things belonged to the people who lived them. Catherine ran Gray Enterprises with a steady hand, rebuilt its reputation, transformed its culture. She called Lisa every Sunday. She never fully forgave herself for 7 years of silence, but she used that guilt to fuel a life dedicated to speaking up when it mattered. Margaret Gray died 4 years after the trial. Alone in her upstate property, a stroke in the night with no one to call for help. Catherine arranged the funeral. Joseph did not attend. The obituary listed her accomplishments, board positions, charitable foundations, society accolades. It did not mention grandchildren, did not mention Lisa, did not mention the choices that had emptied her house of everyone who might have cared. Victoria Ashford vanished from public life entirely. Last known address was a rental apartment in a mid-sized city where no one recognized her name. The $200 million woman living a life worth nothing to anyone, including herself. "Any regrets?" Joseph asked, standing beside Lisa on the porch. The question he asked occasionally, checking in, making sure. Lisa considered it with the seriousness it deserved, the way she always did. "I regret the years we lost," she said. "The years you were not there for the twins. The years I spent surviving instead of living. Those were hard years. Necessary, but hard. And the rest." Lisa turned to look at this man, the one who had destroyed her, the one who had lost everything to earn his way back, the one who had proved through years of consistent and unglamorous and deeply ordinary presence that people could change if they were willing to pay the price. The rest was worth every scar. He pulled her close. They watched the sun go down together, 2 people who had survived the worst of each other and chosen to build something better. And that is where this story ends. Not with a dramatic revelation or a twist or a cliffhanger that demands a sequel. It ends here, on a porch, at sunset, with a family that earned every single thing it has. Because the truth about redemption is that it is not dramatic. It is not a single moment of transformation. It is 1,000 ordinary days, 1,000 phone calls answered, 1,000 promises kept, 1,000 Tuesday nights and Saturday mornings, and unremarkable moments that accumulate into something that cannot be faked or manufactured or purchased with any amount of money. Lisa Moore built a kingdom from nothing. Joseph Gray burned his down to earn a place in hers. Their children grew up knowing that people are complicated, that good people make terrible mistakes, that terrible mistakes do not have to define entire lives. And that love, real love, the kind that survives betrayal and rebuilds from rubble and outlasts the people who tried to destroy it, that love is always worth the risk. If this story has taught you anything, I hope it is this. Your worst chapter does not have to be your last chapter. The people who counted you out do not get to write your ending. And the walls you built to protect yourself may have kept you safe, but they may also be keeping you from the life you actually want. It takes courage to let those walls down. It takes even more courage to let someone back in after they have hurt you. And it takes the most courage of all to look at a person who failed you and say, I see who you are now, and I am willing to try. Lisa tried, Joseph earned it, and together they built something that neither of them could have built alone. A life that was not perfect, but a life that was theirs. That is the end. The door is closed. The story is complete. And on the other side of that closed door is a family that fought for every single thing it has and won. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.